Alright, let's talk about Asgard's Wrath 2 finally after 5 months since release, getting an enhanced graphical update exclusively for Quest 3. Also within this update, the little surprise aforementioned as a bonus is that they've included an all-new theme in the Uncharted Rift dungeons inspired by the Duat Underworld. Update 5.0.1 also brings higher resolution textures, enhanced details on large characters, upgraded shaders, increased resolution on rocks, better terrain blending, etc. Also, before getting further into the video, I will throw a notice in that there will be spoilers of certain locations of the game and characters you meet along the way. Nonetheless, first off, I want to give the game an overview, then show a side-by-side comparison with metrics, and then end it off with some of my final thoughts. But before I get into the usual format that I make these videos in, is the graphical upgrade a big deal? Also considering the long anticipation, and even for those like myself who have been shelving the game until the release of improved textures, the answer is no, not really. But let me explain. This update, at least for me, while actually having played for about 15 hours or so into the game after capturing footage to make a side-by-side comparison, just feels like a refinement to what's already there. Instead of calling this update a Quest 3 enhancement upgrade, I would rather call it a slight improvement. There are areas where you noticed improved details, higher resolution textures, better sharpening of textures, upgraded terrain with hints of specularity, but if you were looking for night and day differences, this update isn't that. Updating Asgard's Wrath 2, installing the update, and actually playing the game, I had to double check if I even had the right version. This update pushes the game from 30.39 gigabytes to 33.54 gigabytes, with an install size of 7.8 gigabytes. You have to go into the settings and toggle on graphical enhancements for the update to take into effect. Previously, a week into the release of Asgard's Wrath 2, the developers included a toggle to turn on 90 Hz, and with this update, you can have both graphical enhancements and the 90 Hz option on at the same time, and it will gray out the other option if you pick either one. But you can circumvent this with Quest Games Optimizer, but when engaging in any combat, expect a whole lot of frame drops while doing so. Even just having the 90 Hz option alone isn't super stable. That's not to take away from Asgard's Wrath 2, as the game is an achievement not only to what's possible on VR, but on standalone VR hardware. Quest, unlike traditional flat screen games, has to render for both your eyes at moderately high resolutions to not look like complete crap and at a high enough frame rate to make the experience enjoyable, all while running off a lithium battery jam-packed inside the headset. Asgard's Wrath 2 is on top of the list of best VR experiences to date, but graphically, the biggest giveaway that this game is a quote-unquote mobile game by some users is the lack of good lighting or the importance of shaders. Before I get into what exact improvements this update brings, I do want to mention while recording in this game, they don't go well together and took a lot of restarting my headset, as this is the first time at all on Quest 3 specifically in 3 separate occasions that my headset has crashed the game, and the output was that there wasn't enough memory for the game to run. This texture update along with the game pushes the hardware unlike any other game I've tested and should be a benchmark going forward, generation to generation. So let's move on to the graphical side-by-side showcase. First, I want to begin with some actual gameplay so you can visually see for yourself the small improvements this update brings with fighting mobs as well. It isn't super consistent frame-wise, especially while recording, and even stability before the update, it still needs work. As to the reasoning for toggling off the 90 Hz option in the settings, then I'll move on to discuss and show where throughout the map textures have seen an improvement, and give examples throughout the in-game world of the Great Sand Sea, which is the desert starting area of the game, then into the Delta, which is the swampy region, and the Dead Expanse where the Scorpion layer is, including some characters, mobs, places of interest you would spend most of your time going back and forth. I also started 2 new separate saves on both versions of the game, and I wanted to see if I could notice anything better. And one thing I did notice is that everything appears sharper and clearer. It's not anything major, but rewatching the footage, I'm actually impressed at the attention to detail on the smaller thing. Whether it's the wood on the bar, the fireplace, everything gets slight improvements with resolution, details, and slight specularity. And specularity gives textures that plasticky, shiny look. And pausing the footage, you can pinpoint certain areas where improvements were brought, but they are really subtle. It helps improve the visual presence of the world, especially since Quest 3 has pancake lenses, everything is just so much clearer. Then with the in-game characters, that being with the companions and the various other vendors inside of the game, I didn't notice much of an improvement. With companions in their mount or battle mode, I really didn't see a big difference. Maybe editing the footage, it translates way better than in-game. Some vendors where they sell and trade items, they did get slightly slight improvements. Immediately, something that's noticeable is better contrast to the colors within the environment and make everything come together as a whole. By far the biggest improvement in this update is rocks. My boy Patrick Star would be a proud starfish, as textures of rock resemble less of a blurry mess and you can pinpoint better details of erosion, whether it'll be meshing of textures, caves, and other areas. It's not perfect, as certain textures do go untouched, and there are still various examples of stretched out textures throughout the map. Rocks in this update get improved resolution to textures, improved blending of textures so they don't stick out like a sore thumb. Cliffs also get little cracks to the edges of them and other added details. Nothing drastically huge, but noticeable if you really focus on it. And another aspect is everything still utilizes some type of spatial resolution scaling and improved but low level of detail as you approach objects. Also worth mentioning that the ground terrain in general throughout the various worlds you can travel in Asgard's Wrath did get an improvement as well. A slight bump in resolution and specularity. It gives off the feeling of sunlight or water reflecting off surfaces like how you see in real life. On the Delta, which is the swampy region of the game, the devs also increased the visual detail of this huge creature in the world. And coming across this while inside the headset, you notice it immediately, as one side initially was very blurry and now it looks generally much sharper, since the game does have day and night cycles, not dynamically but changing as you move throughout areas of the game. It took me a while, but man, the night map and the moon in this game is so damn beautiful. Looking up at the sky, you can see the immense amount of detail that Sanzaru put in the game, and the little details really make you appreciate it. It's the little details that get me and really make you fall in love with the game. Also, the vegetation is another great detail within the game, whether it'll be the palm trees overlooking the desert or the little cactus where prickly pears, aloe, onions, or flowers you collect. It is all very vibrant. There's a slight better meshing of textures, and you can see through the comparison and saturation in some parts or added detail in some areas. Of the areas of interest you could pinpoint also got higher resolution textures are the base camps of enemy mobs throughout the world. Specifically the tents, the sharp contrast of the before and after is pretty big. Again, this won't add a whole level of immersion, but textures throughout the world start blending together better, instead of differing from one another where you have an instance of a good looking texture and then a blurry mess right next to it. With objects like this banner on the camp, you can see slight improvements to the environment and an increase on the resolution of textures, or this large compass dial thing on the side of the camp and the various other things located around the map. Then areas like where bodies of water are located get improvements, especially with how the ground, although consisting of a bunch of normal maps, have some added depth and gives the look of uneven terrain. With improved shaders and updated terrain textures, that is also a noticeable upgrade over the previous version of the game. The distinction can be made while on your mount or just walking about. For the sake of it, adding onto the video, I did want to add in a section where I travel from one location to another and see if the performance was similar across the board. When mounting and moving from place to place, there are small dips in performance here and there, but I'll let this footage conclude the video. All that to say, before this update, Asgard's Wrath 2 is already a phenomenal game and an achievement that it only runs on mobile hardware. I could have probably completed 2 runs already before the high resolution texture update dropped, and I honestly can't wait to continue my playthrough of this game after I'm done with this video. Hopefully in the future we end up getting 1 or 2 DLCs to add on to the already vast content within the game. Imagine if they end up going the Skyrim route and keep adding more and more features. One thing that I also wanted to mention was seeing that some of the content in the game was locked behind an event or limited time within a single player game is really annoying and backwards thinking, as I'm sure a sizable portion of the community along with me will never get their hands on those exclusive cosmetics, colorways, or weapons. And lastly, I'll say it time and time again, please Sanzaru Games or anyone at Meta, because I know at least one person will catch this video in their feed. This game deserves a PCVR port, whether it's exclusive to the Oculus PC software or via the cloud or comes out to every platform in 10 years. The most ambitious game to date deserves to touch the rigs of people like me on PCVR. I love Quest and standalone is the future, but bro, imagine the glow up. Sanzaru Games does have an internal build, and in some of the trailers you can see the in-engine footage captured on the PC build. As much as I love Quest, the biggest detriment to games in terms of graphics is lighting. Maybe in the future we see further optimizations and improvements to something like application space warp that is reprojecting frames. We still are a few generations away from getting those true console-like quality, PC quality level type of games on Quest. But yeah, that's all I have to say. If you like the video, video, drop a like down below, comment your thoughts on this update or opinions regarding the Asgard's Wrath 2, as I want to see what you think about the game down below. Subscribe for more content like this and other VR stuff, and see you in the next video. See ya.